Hello, I'm Mitchell Matthews. Today we have another interview with another musical artist all the way from Australia. We have Chymes. Thank you for being here, Chymes.
Thank you for inviting me.
Is there a name you got to be called besides Chymes? Or is Chymes fun?
No, I like Chimes. Chimes is good.
Cool. All right. Let's jump right into it then. So your new EP, Helen Divine, is coming out May 28th, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Congrats on that. First of all, that'll be available on every platform, I assume?
Yes, it'll be available on every possible streaming platform. So whichever one you listen to, it'll be there.
All right. Well, congrats on that. And, it's very common, to see all these interviews with artists that, the newest project is their favorite project to date. And I assume that's the same for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of scary actually because it's quite personal. It's very reflective of my headspace of last year. I wrote it last year and started releasing the singles at the end of last year. So the turnaround was like quite quick for me. And yeah, it's definitely yeah, one of my favorites. I'm actually like in the process of finishing the next one. So I am sort of so yeah, it's my favorite one that's out or that is coming out right now.
Are they related, like the same project, or are they just two different EPs?
Two different EPs.
So, whether for this one or for that one as well, what makes this your best project to date, and how does it improve upon all the music you've released in the past? Also, it's been about like 5 years since your last EP, as I understand, at least on
Yeah,
Spotify.
yeah. It's definitely a lot more cohesive and it's a lot more me. Chimes used to be a duo with my best friend Cameron, who is still part of Chimes, but he's just taken a back seat. He doesn't want to perform and sing and be part of the face of Chimes. So he's just wants to be part of the creation process. So we like to explain it a bit like Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas. A lot of people understand it that way if I explain it like that. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more me and a lot more personal, which I think is part of what makes it my favorite, or in my opinion, the best stuff that's come out or that is coming out because yeah, I feel like it's a lot more personal. It's a bit more of an insight into like parts of my life, or like how my 2020 went really in that way. So yeah, and I feel like in terms of like sound aesthetic, it's my favorite because I like to explain it sort of like it's like the love child of an artist called Banks, who was one of my favorite artists, and Selena Gomez, who was also one of my favorite artists. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It does. And you have this EP, you have the next EP, and do you have any plans to make a studio album in the future? Is it just EPs and singles for the time being? What's the plan in terms of?
I really would like to do an album, but they usually take a lot more time, and I think when I do an album, I want to make sure that I put absolutely everything I have into it. I mean, I do that for every project anyway, but it's I want it to be perfect because it'll be my debut EP. I mean, my debut album. So want it to be like absolutely perfect in every possible way. So I think I'm not quite ready to do an album right now. So yeah, I think for the time being, it's just going to be EPs and singles because they're nice, like bite-sized bits of, my life, or bite-sized bits of stories I want to tell. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, as you just said, it's your most personal EP to date, and your latest single I want to talk about, Death Wish. And I was curious, in a personal sense and just in general, what inspired that song?
Um, it's sort of um, it has a few different meanings, but basically the meaning is about being attached to something or someone that really only causes you damage or hurts you. But the cycle is so familiar that it's almost comforting. So it's like being stuck in this place of, I know this is bad for me, but it's so familiar and it's such a comforting cycle to be in that I can't really get out. And sometimes I like to relate it to my anxiety disorder, where I feel like it's like this monster inside of me that's um, controlling everything and telling me what to do, but at the same time it tricks me into thinking that that's what's best. So it's sort of like I'm aware that this is bad and bad for me, but I can't quite fight it or let go of those feelings. So yeah.
Okay. As a quick aside, I know your song, your other recent single, "Feel Better," kind of touched on similar topics. Is that the main theme of the EP you're going for, or is that just a part of it?
That's just part of it. It really sort of, um, it's about definitely about dualism, which is sort of that's why I called it Hell and Divine, which is a lyric from Death Wish. But it's about the dualism of that kind of headspace, and also about relationships that I was experiencing last year, and sort of processing and healing from as well. So um yeah, it definitely has like dark overtones, and about power struggles. Definitely there's a lot of like power struggles themes in the EP, and definitely with the focus track of the EP called Never Win, which is coming out on release day of the EP. It's about being in a relationship with somebody who's really controlling, and probably narcissistic. But I wrote it from their perspective rather than from mine, which was really fun for me to explore, as an artist and as a creative person, to think about it from a different perspective. And it's quite fun. It's a little bit tongue in cheek, but yeah, I thought it was quite healing for me to try and explore it and like express it in a different way. Yeah.
It's really cool. And for this music, or just any of the music you've written, do you have a specific songwriting style? Is it more like you can just sit down anytime and kind of pump stuff out? Is it more inspiration based, comes as it comes?
Um, Honestly, it's a bit of both. I like to, when I have a writing session, I usually bring another writer into the room and I'll work with Cameron, my producer. So there's three of us. And usually I like to come prepared with an idea or a concept. It could just be, excuse me, it could just be a word or a phrase, or maybe I've expanded further than that and like written a poem or like a bunch of different verses and like tried to rhyme stuff, because I like to be prepared and like have a bit of a focus for a session. um, and usually the inspiration will just come from like anything, honestly, like sometimes a conversation that I'll overhear, or something personal of mine, or a story in a TV show, or things like that, and becomes like creative writing for me. So or it's like a something that happened to me, and using that as inspiration as well. So um yeah, it's a little bit, it really depends, honestly, because yeah, like I said, sometimes I'll come prepared and other times like I've brought nothing and just been like, let's just try and come up with something. And sometimes it'll become very personal and we'll have deep conversations, or other times it'll be about something else and then we'll try and draw a story from that. So yeah.
And then, do you typically write by yourself, or like you and Cameron are like the main people of the Chimes, or do you have like a specific team of collaborators you're always working with?
It's the whole project is myself and Cameron. So Chimes's project is him and I. But so we write all the tracks together, but I actually prefer to bring an extra writer in because I'm like what they call the top liner, and Cameron is the producer. So I find having another top liner in the room with me really beneficial. So I like to organize writing sessions with another writer, and then the three of us will collaborate that way on a song, or to create a song, and that's my preferred method. Just
What
because I find you can't do everything yourself, and having another person with you, having another writer with you is so beneficial because like you could say something really horrible, like a really bad idea, and they could be like, oh actually, and then it like inspires something else. So it's really really beneficial in my opinion. But typically the ideas start with me. Like I said, I'll come up with something, write it in my notes on my phone, and bring it to the session.
does top liner mean? I've never actually heard that phrase before.
So top liner is the person who writes the top line or the melody and lyrics.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you have the top liner and then you have a producer who writes the production, the music, all of that. So yeah.
Gotcha. And then, of course, the EP is reflecting on your year. Obviously, COVID's really ravaged the world, and at least in the United States, it's on a downward trend to say the least. Things are starting to look up here, but obviously, you live and work in Australia, so I'm curious what the COVID experience has been like in Australia, and how that specifically affected you and your guys' career as Chimes.
It's definitely had an impact. I know Australia has dealt with COVID a lot better than other places like America. But yeah, it definitely affected my plans. I was planning to go to America early last year, and obviously that couldn't happen. And I think I was in denial about it. I was like, oh no, like it'll pass in a couple of months and like I can still go. But no, that didn't happen. So that was really unfortunate. And obviously live shows were totally cancelled. And yeah, just like a lot of things shut down, obviously, which was a big hit to the music industry here in Australia as well, which is an industry that's already underfunded by the government, and isn't really appreciated. Like the arts is not really as appreciated as like us artists would like it to be. So yeah, it was definitely a struggle. Definitely a struggle financially, of course. But we got a handle on things pretty quickly. And by the end of last year, I was getting offers to do shows, and I was like, wait, oh my God, I haven't like even thought about live shows because you spend all year thinking, oh, they're not going to happen for ages. And then, yeah, so I've had to like rush to put together my live set. So yeah, that's sort of how COVID impacted me in that way.
Springboarding off what you just said about touring, I mean, based on how everything's looking, do you see yourself being able to tour anytime soon? Are there already plans, or at least rough outlines of plans set for tours in the future?
Honestly, not at the moment. We are sort of like really just focusing on getting the music out there, writing new music. Like I said, the next project is already happening, but definitely opening myself up to offers of shows, like doing support slots and support tours and stuff like that. I have to start rehearsing my live set before any of that happens, obviously. But my biggest audience is actually not in Australia, which is unfortunate because I'm stuck here right now. But my biggest audience is actually in the US. Majority of my streams are from the US. And then after that comes like Southeast Asia, is a really big audience of mine as well. So it's really unfortunate in that sense because I would love to do some shows and do touring and stuff like that, but I can't really go to those places at the moment. So really right now it's just focusing on the music and doing any shows that come my way here.
Have you been to America or Southeast Asia prior to this, or was when you were scheduled to come to the US, was that the first time you would have been able to come here?
I visited America for a holiday before, but not for music purposes. So it just was not really feasible for a while. And we were sort of like building up to the right time to go because touring is so expensive. And you want to make sure that you can at least make back what you spent. So we wanted to make sure we were timing it correctly to do shows. The trip to America that I wanted to do last year was actually just going to be a writing trip to write with people in LA. I also would have liked to go to, excuse me, to Europe, to Sweden specifically, because there's amazing songwriters in Europe that are on my bucket list. But yeah, so that's sort of the situation at the moment.
Okay. And then, moving forward, we met, a couple of months, almost a couple months ago, I arranged a concert live stream benefiting autism acceptance, which is how we got in touch. And just, finding a playlist on TikTok or playlist curator who made a playlist for autistic neurodiverse musicians, which, gave me a lot of people to talk to, including yourself. And I mean, as a person with autism, and you have it as well, I mean, I'm curious, how has, your experience or diagnosis, affected your life, and also how, if it has it affected your career in music?
It's like totally changed my life. I got diagnosed 18 months ago. And so I've lived my whole life up until now, or up until then, not knowing what the hell was wrong with me. So it was very confusing and hard. It was really tough. But having the diagnosis gave me some clarity. I have had to relearn my entire world, and relearn how I interact with the world. It's given me a completely different perspective on everything. How I look back on my childhood has changed. How I see my relationships has changed. And how I am choosing to interact with the world has changed as well. So it's been a lot. And then last year was like the worst year of my life, and my personal life at least. Um, and yeah, so, it's been a very rough, very rough 18 months. And I've had a lot to deal with mentally, like with my mental health and stuff. And in terms of how it's affected my career, it's been interesting. I feel like with the diagnosis and with this new understanding of myself, it's really helped me to be more open in my songwriting, and be more creative. And I, met a songwriter slash artist at the beginning of last year who wrote 5 out of the 6 songs that are on the EP with me. And I spent basically all year with her last year. We saw each other at least once a week. We were writing once a week with each other. And she was really patient and understanding and kind. And I think the safety that she had created in our space had really helped me open up in terms of songwriting, and all of the above. So yeah, and it's also been a bit tricky trying to talk about it publicly because I am still unlearning a lot of my internalized ableism, and find myself very frustrated at myself. And I recently did an interview with a really big news corporation in Australia that just came out 2 days ago. And it was an interview about me and my music and also being autistic. And when it came out, I was like, oh my God. And I like just felt this sense of panic because I don't know, it's really scary. And I'm sure you understand, when you tell people, you feel like they look at you differently or they treat you differently. And it can be really scary. And I think it's just like, it's a learning curve for me, and it's just going to be a bit of a journey on learning to accept myself, and also, yeah, just like take each day as it comes, and like, yeah.
I totally understand. I I sympathize with you there. And then, just to conclude with, the last main question, based on all of those experiences, all the music you put out, where you've come from, where you're going, I mean, what advice do you have for anybody who's wanting to break into the music industry or take their music and career to the next step, like you've been doing over the past few years?
Um, it's kind of a broad question, that one. It depends on where you're at in your journey or in your career, because um I just think if you are really dedicated, you will work hard for it. And the biggest advice I have is to stay in your own lane and don't focus on what other people are doing. Do what you like, because you will eventually find people who resonate with that as well. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's an audience for everybody, for every artist. And find people who understand your vision, because there's a lot of people who say they will work with you or can do you favors or can help you out. Um, but if they aren't passionate about you and they're not passionate about your project, then the results aren't going to be the same, if that makes sense. So yeah, find people who understand you and your project and are passionate about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. And, before we go, I mean, is there anything specific you want to say or shout out in context of your EP release or just in general?
I guess the only thing I want to say is Helen Divine, out May 28th, and it's out on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, whichever one you listen to, it's going to be there. And I hope you like it and that you stream it.
No, I spent earlier today going through all your music, so I personally can't wait to listen to it and
Oh,
appreciate,
yay.
appreciate you sitting down with me. So thank you, of
Thank you for inviting me. It was really good to chat.
course. And that's it for me, Mr. Matthews. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Cool.